Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Coffee and Conversation. We are joined today by Cindy Petrov Alfaro. She is a law graduate, founder of Lawtina, public speaker. She spoke at TEDx, immigration advocate, and activist. Excuse me. Cheers to you, Cindy. Thank you for joining today. You have a really incredible story, so why don't you just tell us about your background and how you got into what you're doing and a little bit about what Lawtina is.
Yeah, so I'm an immigrant from El Salvador. So coming to the US, my parents have always told me education is so important. They always said, that someone can take everything from you, but what you can do with your degree or education can't ever take that. It's creating value for yourself. So that's kind of where my passion for education started. And so I got my bachelor's degree, and afterwards I applied for law school. Being a first generation in a lot of ways, going to school and higher education, it was very different. There's challenges and struggles, but I think as you overcome them, you become more resilient. And for me, that story translating to graduation, I felt very alone at first. I felt that um, how could someone else understand where I was coming from? And I also felt that our Latinx community was not very seen. So I started mentoring first students. So I started providing services with Latina, and then I started creating different types of t-shirts and mugs and content that was relevant to my community. And I realized how other people felt alone too, and that this was making them visible. But more importantly, that we had very unique stories that were not being told. So I started storytelling and building a community for my brand, which is so important. I think when your clients can connect to your story, when they can connect to your true identity of who you are, the more they want to support you, the more they will show up for you, and the more that they want to be a part of that movement. So that's how I started Latina. I began sharing not only my story, but I started sharing other stories and creating a platform for them to be seen. So my community is mainly all Latinos. We do have allies that work with us, which I love. I love working with all types of people of different walks of life, men and women. Mainly Latina is mainly woman driven.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm trying to be more inclusive. I'm going to be expanding this year to other types of services that includes both genders in that way, so that we're getting a more holistic um, push for higher education and services for our community. It's so important for us in the legal field to provide equity in all types of ways, including our own communities. So that's why I'm doing this. And I'm mainly teaching through my brand, which is interesting in itself. I think it's very unique because I think a lot of times we will create something that, for me was creating t-shirts that, that said who I am. So for me, my favorite one is it says Señorita JD, because so having a Juris Doctorate, Señorita means lady. So Lady JD, that's my favorite one. And it just kind of shows that I earned that. And it reminds me that I earned that all my parents' hard work and my hard work, that's what the fruits of our labor was. But it also connects me to our community in the sense that they too have gone through that same pathway, and that our platform makes them more visible, that our brand makes them more visible. And it's always important to keep that in mind when you are creating a brand. So that's kind of what we're doing with Latina. That's how it came to be. And now we are, this last year was our first year. So we hit 5,000 followers pretty quickly. I thought it was pretty awesome, because it does take some time to grow a following.
Yes, it does.
There are some other accounts that have been around, and I'm not the first one to do this. I think the the different types of merchandise available to make yourself seen is pretty first. Doing some of the other projects within Latina is a first, but the message of Latinx in the law has been around for a couple of years, maybe before me. Before I even went to law school, I think there was Latina Uprising and other types of legal-based accounts like that. But the cool thing is that once you make it your own, it will continue to grow in your own way, in your unique way. So that's how it all started. And we've been doing and expanding little by little in our what we provide. Now we are doing stickers and laptop cases and bags, and it just continues to grow. And we're just not doing legal type of wear, with our slangs and whatnot, but it's also going to other Latinx who are considering going to higher ed overall. So, which is pretty cool, that we get to have those type of clients too. So, yeah.
That's great. I love your brand. And what I love about it is I think that the legal industry or the law industry can be daunting and intimidating for a lot of people, but you make it fun and you can relate to it and understandable. And especially for communities of color that may not have a lot of higher education, or maybe their English is their second language, you really do a great job of making it approachable and, like I said, fun and understandable for really anyone to enjoy. I think that's what's needed, especially in your industry. I think people think of the legal industry as maybe kind of antiquated and old and not young and like the millennial style, and you really do a great job of that. Tell us about your experience being a TEDx speaker. I think that that's something that, as somebody who is a public speaker as well, that's obviously the pinnacle of being a public speaker, is doing a TED Talk. And I was really impressed to see yours. And what was it about? And how was the preparation for that? And how did it go? What was the feedback that you got after? I think people would be really inspired to hear about your story through that.
Yeah, so I grew up in Southern Indiana. Now, when I was in law school, I did have opportunity to branch out and work in Washington, D.C., along with some of those areas in those cities, right there around the same area. But in Indiana, life is very different. There is a lot of lack of diversity. You don't often see people that you can look up to, not because they don't want to, it's just because the community is so young there. A lot of immigrant populations like my own, who didn't have an opportunity or the same opportunities to go to school, who didn't have the opportunities to grow their business as fast. Learning English, that was a challenge. So it very much is like, it's like New York 100 years ago almost, it's very different. And there is also a lot of institutionalized racism and a lot of just racism in your everyday life. So facing those challenges as a person of color was very difficult for my family and I, coming to the US about over 20 years ago now. And now that I look back to that talk, I can see how much imposter syndrome was in myself, not like having done all these amazing things and earned all these awards and all these degrees. I didn't really quite believe in myself. So that was the beginning of my journey of, I know I created Lawtina, but what am I truly sharing with the world? What value am I bringing in, and what action am I calling out to? So I started by exploring myself before I auditioned. I remember the application was there. They were asking for speakers, and I did not know exactly what to say because I had so many things to say. And so going back to exploring like myself, I finally got enough strength or like courage to submit my application. And then I got an email several weeks later that I didn't get the actual I didn't get to audition. And I was shocked because I thought I should be, you know, I'm doing something like at first, come on. Then I remember that someone mentioned, well, maybe in Evansville, Southern Indiana, it's not ready to talk about, you know, race and higher education, and maybe it's not ready. And I thought, no, they need to be ready because it's happening, and I'm
Yeah.
making it happen. It needs to be talked about. And this is just, you know, they're starting in a very small world before I moved out here to Washington, in Vancouver, Washington. So my world was very limited to Indiana. So I said, no, it needs to happen, but maybe this is not the platform. And it turns out that they had another person that dropped out for the auditions and had a spot available, and they started calling people that were on their list. And I was one of those people that was on their next list, which, you know, I didn't mention during I recently talked to my coach on campus at the time, Lawtina, and I didn't mention, you know, you didn't choose me, but I think my message was a very, very mixed, and I wasn't exactly sure about what I wanted to say. So they, at last minute, asked me to come audition. And I auditioned one day after, and I had to prepare an entire speech for them. So I remember praying over it because I'm a big believer in prayer and making an outline for myself. And I nailed it. My story began with with myself and my struggles, and ended with building something where I could connect with human beings and sharing the vulnerability and being true to yourself in that way. Not walking around with all the labels that you carry. And it's not about not valuing yourself, it's actually valuing yourself so much that you're giving love back to your community.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I wanted to do with Lawtina. That's what my TED Talk was about. And my coaches were incredible. You actually do get coaches that will walk you through making sure your speech is tailored to your audience, but also at a global level, because anyone can click on that and on that, you know, video and see what your
Right.
message is about. So I was very nervous about being on stage in the first place. I'm very camera shy person. They told me there was going to be 300 people, and I was just very overwhelmed with the idea of 300 people, and then whoever else is going to watch the video afterwards. So working through the nerves, not being with my coach physically was hard, but I practiced a lot on video. I tailored my message. The message came out to be, the final one started off with talking about everything I've accomplished and then tearing it down, which is really a weird way to start because the message is supposed to be empowering. So, but I started with reading what my bio says, all the things I've accomplished, and then I broke that down and said, this is not what you need to know about me. What you need to know about me are my struggles and my vulnerability and who I am, and how I engage my community in this way, making changes in the world. And it's true, and it has held true to me for this entire year and a few months now that we're in 2020. But that's mainly how it all started, with being vulnerable, because when you're on that stage, you do have to be authentic because the audience can read that through you. You know, so I did, unlike other TEDx speakers, I did get teary-eyed, realizing how much imposter syndrome was ingrained in my own story. And at the beginning of the talk, they clapped. I didn't expect that. I was expecting boos or something. I don't know why, because I do know why. I mainly thought that I'm speaking to an elite, mostly Caucasian community, and I didn't know how they would view me as a woman of color. And towards the end of that talk, I actually got a standing ovation, and I realized how powerful that message was. That even that when you're vulnerable and you share that, it can transcend across cultures, and it can translate into moving forward and learning from each other. So that was something that was so important to share, and I didn't realize I had been holding on to all of me, all of my story, not sharing it with everyone because I was too afraid to be vulnerable in the first place. So that was a very moving experience for me, and I hope I can do it again a different way. And I really would like to do another TED Talk. I would love to get to Big TED. I think that's my dream
You can
to
do it,
get
girl.
fellow. So I will be applying for the TED Fellowship next year for sure.
Great. I think you should. And I love that you did that because I think that I've always believed that our struggles bring us together more than our successes because people can achieve varying levels of success in their lives. And I may not be able to relate, but we all have struggles and we can all relate to that. And I think as women, I also suffer from imposter syndrome myself. And I think that that's something that a lot of women in particular suffer from. And you get, like you said, you get all these degrees or awards, or you do these things and you still don't feel like you're enough. So for you to have gotten on that platform and been vulnerable and shared your struggles, that resonates a lot more than rattling off all of our successes. And we are so much more than what our LinkedIn bio says or our Facebook bio or Instagram bio. And we're just humans, going through struggles. And I'm really proud of you for doing that. And I look forward to seeing you do many more. I'm sure you will.
Thank you.
What, couple more questions. What have you during this quarantine time realized is an essential item that you can't live without? You sell a lot of great merchandise on your website. Maybe on Lawtina, there's a product that has been most popular. What are you hanging on to right now?
It varies. I think it's by season. I know that we're approaching graduation, so I did
Mm-hmm.
for graduation, and there have been this design for some time, and I just noticed this too. You can have your product on your website, but you do have to use the power of social media to make it seen. So I had this design that says brown, educated, and proud, and I have had it for like mostly all of last year, and I realized I was not sharing enough of my mock-ups on my Instagram. So I shared this one and it started like just spreading. People not only in the legal field but in other fields were loving this design. And I realized that that was that's the one thing that you need to know about your businesses, to not be shy to share everything that you have in your store. um it can make a difference in what you can earn. It's an income, and it can definitely make a difference in how you're impacting your community. So for me, something that it's not only brand based, business based, but it's also community based. I didn't realize that this one shirt and now I have it as a sweater. It will be so important to my community that they felt that was the message that they were trying to portray. So that's probably one thing I can't live without right now on my store. And when you send me those questions of like, what the one thing that you can't live without, and I was thinking, my husband looked at me, he goes, you can't live without our pups. So we have two dogs, and I was like,
Aw.
that's true. Like that's how my stress, kind of disseminates after the day of work, because they are always playing around. We're home all the time. They're always, asking for attention and love, and it's my favorite
Yeah.
time of the day when they wake up. So
Aw, that's so sweet. Yeah,
yeah.
animals bring. We actually borrowed a dog from a friend of ours for emotional support, and it's been amazing. He's brought us so much joy. Yeah. Is there another business or brand outside of your own that you have really been impressed by that has pivoted well during this time or is doing something great in the community?
Oh my goodness, my favorite one, and they know this because I'm constantly girling like all over the Instagram, liking everything and commenting, is We All Girl Latina. So I would
Mm.
love to get a part of what they do. I'm part of their community, but they had a summit coming up and it was canceled. They rescheduled it and it was canceled. And they're such a really big company compared to what I'm doing. They're not as big as some other, bigger retreats, but this one was pretty big. About 1,000 women gathered together and they meet up. This year was in Palm Springs, and it was canceled, but they pivoted in a way that I didn't expect. instead of staying quiet and, oh, here's your refund, they actually created free content for women who are entrepreneurs, and they provided it on our community membership, which is free, um, for us to learn how to make ourselves even more visible during this time.
Mm.
And so I have been learning, through being a very young business owner, that generosity translates to loyalty, and it translates to goodwill and more sales, in the sense of they will support you. Your customers will support you when you do that. And so I know that you had Jamie earlier, and she talks about
Yeah.
generosity. Watch that, and it's so true. Um, and so I was very impressed with Wheel Girl Latina. Now they're even providing an opportunity for you to have a opportunity to their woman, their customer base, by advertising your content on their page, which is what I'm going to be
Oh,
doing with, and also own Historic Latina in my own marketing firm. So I'm doing a lot of different things too. But those are the things that I very much appreciate when I see other women like being there for another one. Like, it's not a competition in the sense of um, you're trying to outdo another person that's similar to you, but you are unique in your own way.
mhm.
So I'm unique in my own way as the legal field, and I admire what they do for other women. So that's definitely something that a brand I admire a lot. So yeah.
Nice. I'll have to check them out. Well, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for all of the amazing things that you're doing for your community. How can we support you? Where are you spending your time online? What is your website that we should check out? How can we support you through this time?
Thank you. Well, my website is latinajd.com. That's the shortest version. It does have other versions like Latina Shop. So I have bought all these, websites. I've linked to it, but the shortest one is lawtinajd.com. And that's where I post. That's where I have my blogs. If you want to read and find anything inspirational, share that. I think that's a way to support buying from the store. I think that's another way. I do try to create now more Latina empowered merchandise that's not just for the legal community. So it's something that I've been working on, and I think that you can find other resources even if you're not in the legal field, where you will feel inspired and empowered to do whatever it is that you're passionate. So, my Instagram is official Latina and Latina Shop, and that's where I spend most of my time. Tomorrow I have an IG live at 9 a.m. If anyone, this will be afterwards, but that's my last one. And moving forward, I'll be moving on with, which I'm announcing tomorrow, but this will be afterwards. So, the Latinx Network, and that will be also a podcast. So I'm really excited to get that started. I'll be working.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And
Yeah.
starting it within this month. I know I do have a lot going on, but something that I do love the process. And like you said, you sometimes have a passion. You can start, anything from where your message starts, and continue to grow that. And for me, it definitely is starting a community-based branding. So yeah.
I love it. Well, thank you so much. We will follow you and share content and tune in to your upcoming podcast. Keep up the
Thank
great
you so
work.
much.
Yeah, thank you, Cindy.
Thank you, Mariah.
Thanks for joining. Bye.
Thank you.